The story begins with the fact that Elaine was addressed by her stepmother, who assured her that she would soon return with her father, so all she had to do was sit and wait, and the girl agreed, after which the carriage left. She waited for an hour, 2 hours. It got to noon, but no one came back, so the girl was left alone, abandoned by her closest people. A year passed. A girl in the city was looking through a shop window at fresh pastries. She was already 9 years old at the time, and one of the shop assistants saw her and offered her some bread. The heroine refused, saying that she had no money now and had already eaten some raspberries and would buy bread later with the money she earned. But the woman nevertheless handed the girl a whole package of bread products, assuring her that they were on sale. The woman warned her not to go too far into the forest, as there were rumors of monsters there, adding that if she was hungry, she could come here any time. As she said goodbye, she told her to move a little further away, as they were selling bread, and the happy girl ran away, satisfied that she had managed to get some food. On that day, a year ago, when her stepmother left her, Heroina didn't even have money for a carriage, so she couldn't return home, and all the people passed her by, pretending not to notice. It was hard for her, an aristocrat, to survive on the street, enduring cold and hunger, bullying by street children, and wanton violence. So those times were very cruel for her. When she saw the bulletin board, she hoped that they were looking for her. The girl realized that her stepmother was unlikely to look for her, but her father was another matter, because she was his family. The heroine's hopes were heard. She found an ad from the Crystalia family. But it was not exactly what she wanted to see. It was about celebrating the birth of a son in her family. But still, this news helped her to adapt to this life. As she walked down the street, the girl realized that her stepmother was a very greedy woman. She left her out of fear that she might take the place of her child. But if there had been someone to protect her then, maybe everything would have been different. Suddenly, she saw a carpeted area in front of her, and she decided that the owner of this place was not here, so she could sleep here tonight. And there was also bread. It could have been the happiest day of her life if an evil man hadn't suddenly appeared behind her, grabbed her, and dragged her out of town. But she managed to bite him and hide. She didn't understand why it happened, and when she saw the man holding a dagger, she was afraid that if he caught her, she might die. The heroine was overcome with despair. She could not understand why she had to go through all this, what she had done wrong to make her life like this. But in a moment she pulled herself together, and not hearing his sounds, she decided to run away while he was gone. Unfortunately for the girl, she ran into a giant monster that was devouring a man. Realizing that the attacker was the man the monster was devouring, she did not run and accepted her fate, thinking in the end that next time she would like to be born into a loving family. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a blue flame appeared, and in a matter of seconds, turned the monster into ashes. Seeing her savior, the heroine realized that the monster she was so afraid of was destroyed by this person. It was her first meeting with Bella, but she was unable to say anything to the savior, as she almost instantly fainted from all the experience. The heroine had nightmares about her past, so she woke up sweating. There was no one around, and she was lying in a comfortable bed. For some time, she couldn't understand whether it was a dream or reality. Trying to identify where she was, the girl heard a very familiar scent, followed by voices outside the door, so the heroine, frightened, decided to pretend to be still asleep. A man and a woman came into the room. The man asked what she planned to do with the child, as she had seen the woman's strength. But she was calm, saying that she was very scared when she noticed the monster almost eating the child. And so she would decide what to do next when she woke up. After the conversation was over, the man said that he would not be able to accept a human child anyway, and he left, while the witch stayed to take care of the tired child. Realizing that she was not in danger, the girl stopped pretending, and the woman, noticing that she was awake, just smiled and asked if she was in pain, as she had a fever. The true personality of this person, this blue flame, they were told many tales about them. These tales were hundreds of thousands of years old. Some said that she existed long before the creation of Filion, the witch. The first words the woman heard from the girl were a question about whether she was really a witch, and she was surprised by the child's knowledge, but assured her that if people called her a witch, then so be it. After that, the heroine immediately asked what the witch's real name was, which surprised her even more, since no one had ever asked her name, but there was no point in hiding it. So she introduced herself as Bella. When the woman learned that the heroine's name was Elaine, she asked if she had a place to go, and when she heard no, she offered to live with them. At that moment, the girl realized that she had nowhere to go back to anyway, and she was unlikely to be rescued for any suspicious purposes, so she had no reason to refuse, and she was happy about it. In the end, she stayed with Bella, as she had nowhere else to go, so she agreed to stay without hesitation. But there was still something that bothered her. While still in the room, the heroine asked if she was really allowed to stay here, as it seemed to her that the man clearly did not like her. Smiling, the woman said that he was her friend, and therefore they would get along, because Yezmil was a demon. The girl remembered that she had been told that demons by nature do not hate people, and therefore she was afraid that they would not hate her either. And then she slipped on a rock, but she did not fall because a man saved her at the last moment. The girl was shocked by the sudden appearance of the man, so she thanked him, and he saw that she was not in danger and left in silence. The heroine didn't want to let him go, so she shouted his name after him, and when he heard it, he stopped and said that it seemed Bella had already told her about him, and then the girl should know why he was against her being here. And since she knew everything, there was no point in talking any further, and he said outright that she had to leave the place. The child asked if it was because she was human that she had managed to surprise the demon, and he noticed that the witch had told much more than she should have, so he did not hide his intentions. This used to be the case, but now he simply had no desire to live under the same roof with her. And the girl realized that this was the case. If the man had not been a man of the people, he would hardly have saved her. But if this was not the case, then the woman had not told her everything. The heroine was at a loss for words, so she asked him directly why he didn't want to live with her. And the demon said that she didn't know anything about them. Wasn't it suspicious to stay with them? And she should have noticed how friendly Bella was to her. She had lived alone for a long time, and she knew the taste of loneliness, which is probably why she offered the girl to stay here, and even more so, let a person in, although she had never done so before. Of course, some people are not bad, but once her only one betrayed her vilely. The one she trusted lied to her. He mixed poisons in her and she started coughing up blood. And it was all about eternal life. If you drink the blood of a witch, you can get eternal life. At that time, people believed in all sorts of nonsense. So he wounded Bella to drink her blood, and despite all this, she brought the girl here. And so the man did not want to see Bella suffer anymore. And that was the real reason for his dislike of the girl. So he hoped for understanding and asked her to leave the place. From now on, the heroine began to understand why Yezmil did not trust her. He must really care about the woman very much, and the only way out was to leave them, but she still wanted to stay with her. The girl said that it may be greedy of her, but Bella saved her at the most difficult moment of her life. She was the only one who reached out to help, and the child had never received such warmth from anyone. And the word family. The woman showed her these feelings for the first time, and it made her live again, to have a family. It was a great happiness. She saved the child from death. She was sincerely worried about her condition, and she smiled so sweetly at her, and that's why the heroine decided that she would thank her so that she would smile again. The witch was standing nearby all this time, eavesdropping, so when she heard these words, her eyes filled with tears. And the man noticed, so he had no choice but to accept it. But in the end, he threatened her that if she dared to hurt the woman, he would get rid of her immediately. But the girl was not afraid of this. She was just happy about it. In a moment, Bella herself came out from behind the tree, and the girl saw her and immediately ran to share the good news that Yezmil had allowed her to live here. And having received permission, she felt immediately relieved. They reached a new level of relationship, and after the witch taught her fencing, they were sure that she had an innate talent, and that she could soon become a master in this field. They also traveled around the country, and in the 5th year of their life together, she met a man, the first prince of the kingdom of Filion, Lloyd Filion, and the witch and the prince immediately fell in love. Later, they had a child whom she named Reki Filion, and every day was like a fairy tale, and she prayed that they would never end. But unfortunately, this dream was not to be. A few years later, in the prince's manor, the owner was drinking tea with his fiancée, and they were discussing the upcoming birthday of their child, to which the man assured him that he had already finished all the preparations for the holiday. Hearing this, the woman was outraged as he kept it all a secret, and she also wanted to help, but the prince assured her that on this birthday he also wanted to surprise his wife, and that's why he didn't tell her. He noticed a strange necklace on the woman, and she told him that it was a gift from the emperor, who said that it was hard for him that his son was so far away, and so he gave it to him, which made the prince frown a little. The servant turned to the man, saying that it was time to go to a meeting, and he began to get ready. And when he finished, he warned that he would be back for lunch, and therefore he wanted to have lunch with the whole family. The blacksmith was shocked when the girl brought him the corpse of the monster. He said that it was all precious materials, and it was the first time he had ever seen someone catch one. Ellen was already 20 years old at the time, and she noticed that this would be a gift for Reiki, who was already 3 years old at the time, and time flew by so fast. The man said that it would take him about a month to make it, and it was just the right amount of time. So the girl thanked him and decided to go back, as she had been catching the monster for 10 days and was already missing her family. On the way back, the heroine remembered the boy, how she had recently asked him what he wanted, and he pointed at her sword, so she assured him that it was too early, as he was still very young. And remembering this, the girl had the sweetest feelings. Meanwhile, Bella was feeding the baby in her room and noticed that her husband was late, when there was a knock on her door and she was asked to come in. It was the maid who decided to inform her that there was no meeting today for some reason. She also asked the other maids, and all those present saw them being led to the central altar and said that the crown prince himself was among them, although the altar was used only on holidays. The woman decided to check what was going on herself, so she asked the maid to sit with the child for a while, telling him that she would be back soon and was going to find his father, and then left. On the way there, something terrible was happening. The witch felt a dark energy, and the further she went, the stronger it felt. And when she reached her destination, she was terrified. She didn't understand what kind of place it was, who the people were, or what was happening there. But in a moment she noticed that her husband was lying bloody on the altar, and this sent her into indescribable despair. Meanwhile, Elaine was riding home on her horse, and on the way she noticed that the crows were surprisingly noisy today, and sensing something was wrong, she decided to hurry. The witch could not believe what she was seeing. Her husband was lying on the pedestal, completely cold. She begged him to wake up, but he could not answer her. Laughter rang out in the hall, and she saw the emperor himself holding a heart in his hands. Realizing what was going on, she looked at her husband again, and he did indeed have a cutout in his chest. The witch was seized with anger and hatred. She accused the emperor of killing his own son, but he just snapped his fingers, after which the woman began to have terrible headaches. She heard a voice in her head, and her necklace at that moment glowed. The woman recalled that she had read about such a thing, that if you make a sacrifice, you can curse a person. It was called the Eye of the Dragon. She immediately tried to take it off, but it was too late. After the curse was imposed, she could no longer remove the necklace. And now her body could be controlled by the emperor. She realized that this person should be torn apart, but the voices in her head ordered her to kill him. Later, Ellen was already at the palace and noticed that everything around her was glowing. And as she got closer, she realized that it was magic, the flames of Bella. And without understanding how it happened, she hurried inside to deal with everything. An explosion suddenly occurred at the entrance, and a witch emerged from it. They exchanged glances, after which Bella immediately attacked the girl, who did not understand what was happening and thought that the woman had lost control. Holding the mighty witch's blow, the heroine tried to calm her down, but she couldn't hear her anymore, and with one strong blow, she sent the girl flying to the nearest wall. A moment after landing, the girl noticed that she was covered in blood and realized how dangerous the situation was. Bella lost her temper, and she did not know what to do, as she was now at a great disadvantage. While she was thinking about the plan, the witch instantly approached her and intended to stab her in the neck. But the heroine was well trained and at the last moment was able to take the blow on the shoulder. As they approached, she managed to see the necklace, which gave off a strange glow, and she decided that it might be because of it. So she had no choice but to try to take it away. In one big leap, the girl decided to get closer to Bella. who responded by sending a wave of flames towards Ellen, landing despite her wounds and taking the necklace. The dazed woman almost instantly regained consciousness, but it was too late. Elaine, mortally wounded, was falling to the ground. She realized that she would die here, and therefore apologized for not being there in time. On January 31st, 512, the inhabitants of the capital city of Philippi, which was called the Blessing of the Empire, committed a terrible sin. Inside herself, the heroine felt everything that was happening. But she could not do anything. She begged the witch not to give her heart away, but the next moment, she woke up screaming. Suddenly, she heard the last words that Bella had prepared for her. She apologized, admitting her guilt, but it was too late to be sorry, and so she decided to give the girl her heart. And although she had no right to say such a thing, she asked her to protect her child. When she woke up in the ruined palace, the first thing she did was examine her body, as she was sure she was dead. All her wounds had miraculously disappeared, and the last thing she remembered was Bella piercing her heart. She realized that the witch had indeed given her her heart, and then tears flooded her eyes. Bella had always been kind to her, but the girl was not the person she was supposed to save. And then the heroine remembered about the necklace. So she broke it, and Bella regained consciousness. But when she wore it, there were no problems. The magic circle drawn on the necklace, as well as her magic, was the same when the girl approached the palace. Drawing a magic circle with blood that was inscribed on the necklace, she realized that she didn't remember, but none of it made sense now. She didn't know who made Bella like this, but even at the cost of her life, she vowed to find the person who did. Probably, someone lured the woman into a trap. Perhaps he needed the witch's heart for eternal life, but if the heart was the target, it would be easier to neutralize the woman. The heroine made her way through the overgrowth and realized that there was no seal. Everything was in ruins, and there was no trace of the imperial palace. Suddenly, she saw a whole group of monsters in front of her. She didn't know where they came from in such numbers, as they had never seen such a large number in the empire before. Maybe they came here because of what had happened, but they still needed to move discreetly. A flying monster roared above her, and the heroine realized that the battle was unavoidable. This place continued to excite her. In the midst of the battle, she noticed that her body felt very light, and she felt very strange. It felt completely different. Sword fighting required a lot of strength, but now everything was different. During the training, Ellen often wondered how the woman had so much mana. They trained every day, and the witch's breathing was equally even, to which she assured her that she was only using mana to the minimum. Because she was a witch, a creature that combined human feelings and mana, a person's desire to live a long and happy life, the witch's heart consisted of this energy. A witch can live forever because she has such a heart in her body. It has a strong mana from the very beginning, and therefore it may seem that she is infinite, as she said, and therefore it seems that the heroine has inherited the power of a witch. Having finished with the monsters, the girl saw a village in front of her and decided to go there, as she needed to get information. When she saw one of the saleswomen on the street, she decided to ask her about it. But the fact that the heroine was covered in blood scared the woman. But she asked her what day it was. It turned out that she had been unconscious for 5 days, after which he asked her what had happened to the people, whether someone had fled here from the city. But the woman did not understand what was going on. So the heroine asked more precisely whether there were people who had survived the disaster that happened 5 days ago. The saleswoman still didn't understand what she was talking about, as that disaster happened 20 years ago. And she was in a state of shock, not understanding how it could have happened. It was supposed to be 512, but the calendar showed 532. Meanwhile, the man, surrounded by 2 henchmen, was killing the maids in the house. One of them committed suicide right in front of him, and the wards were excited, saying that they should take a break from this work and stop looking for the killer for a while. Their chief was Duke Recci de Pelion Killiard, son of the last prince of Lloyd Filion. He reached the level of master at the age of 16. He was called the Lord Miracle Worker, who resurrected the dying land of Philon. The Knights of Phileas led by him had a high reputation among warriors, but he could not hide his origin. that he was the son of a witch. There was only one maid left alive, and the man offered her to tell him everything they were planning, and he would let her live. But the girl smiled, saying that he was very merciful, despite the fact that his mother was a witch. So many people had died at his mother's hands, and so many had taken up swords, wanting him dead. So she told him right to his face how much she hated the son of a cursed witch. After renting a room in a local hotel, the girl thought about what she should do. 20 years had passed since then. Rachel was still a child. If Yesmel or Lloyd were there, it meant that they had died at the hands of a witch. So what was she to do? Why live? The heroine went down to get a drink of water when the owner of the establishment saw her, and, learning that she wanted water, said she would bring it right away. And the girl was surprised by such kindness. Suddenly, the woman's face changed dramatically, as if she remembered something extremely important, and she offered the girl some fresh soup. She refused, but the hostess did not hear her. She ran to get a fresh portion. After sitting down to eat, the woman sat down next to her, wanting to question the newcomer. She asked if she was a traveler, as she had never seen her here before. She was glad to see new faces here, as the forest nearby was teeming with monsters. Few people came to this place, and so it was very lonely for her to work here. If her son came back, it would be good. He left a month ago to join the Knights of Philes. The heroine could not have known about them, as these knights did not exist 20 years ago, and the hostess was even more surprised by this, as they were perhaps the most famous order in these parts, and they were led by Duke Filion. Hearing this, the girl's spoon fell out of her hands, as the woman said that he was the son of a witch, and the heroine had no doubts, so she burst into tears of happiness. After a moment, the heroine got up from the table, determined to find what she had to protect, and asked the hostess where she could find the Duke, to which she replied, puzzled, that he must be in a city called Killiard. The city was enclosed by large stone walls, with 2 guards on duty, one of whom would fall asleep at his workplace, and the other would wake him up, saying that there was a monster's nest behind the wall, and one could never know when they would attack. But the carefree watchman declared that even if so, the Knights of the Fillet would easily deal with it. And besides, there was a barrier on the wall, so the monsters would not get through anyway, when suddenly, a scream was heard behind the wall. The men were immediately overcome with fear for their lives, but they noticed that there was a person there, a girl covered in blood, smiling sweetly, and asked to open the gate for her. She was brought to the headquarters of the knight's office, and one of the officers began to ask her about the purpose of her visit. The man could not accept how she came here, and when the girl said that she came through the monster's nest, the man jumped up to her in emotion. He was embarrassed by how easily she talked about her hike, because the place she came from was called the Monster's Nest, and she had come here herself. The heroine sincerely did not understand why the man was so embarrassed, so she assured him that she had no choice but to go this way. Her goal was the entrance exam. The entry into the Knights of Killiard ends in 2 days, and therefore she was in a hurry not to be late. The man was alarmed by what he heard. She had come here only because of the entrance exams, but they were held every year, so he did not understand why the rush. The heroine realized that she could not tell the whole truth, as 20 years had passed and she had just woken up, and they would hardly believe it. Even if Rachel believes her, what should she tell him? That Bella died because of her. She needs to apologize properly, and so she assures him that she needs money, and knights like her are paid a lot. The officer thought for a while, and then said that he had already seen a large number of people who applied only for money, and such people were eliminated at the first stage. They did not accept moneylenders. The heroine, realizing that she had spoken foolishly, immediately began to justify herself, as if she had come here not only for money, but also to protect someone, and therefore she should join the Knights of Phileas. The man did not seem impressed by this answer. He confirmed that the girl had fighting skills if she managed to cross this mountain range by herself. But the Knights of Phileas are very different from ordinary knights. They are an elite unit, and their work involves frequent travel, going to places where powerful monsters live and receiving generous rewards for their elimination. That's why they have such a high salary, higher than other knights. Anyone can apply to join the order, but they should think carefully. If they die defending their family, what will be left with them? Even if it pays less, she should choose a less risky profession, and everyone is happy for the good of her family, so… The heroine suddenly interrupted him, saying that she would protect them and would not die. She did not want to go through the loss of her only family member again. The man accepted the girl's firm choice, so he said that he was just giving her advice, and she had to make the choice herself. But in the meantime, he would prepare the room, so she should clean herself up, and tomorrow she would be taken to apply. Leaving the girl, the guy thought about it all. He wasn't sure about it, but only one person could cross the mountain range. Something was wrong here, maybe luck or skill, but in any case, tomorrow he would have to inform the captain. That night, the heroine had a dream where they were all together. Rechi was playing with the girl's hair, and it seemed that everyone was happy. The girl asked who he liked more, his sister or his mother, and when she heard the word mother, she was upset. And then, the real horror began with the words, "What are you doing here?" Lloyd appeared. He was all bloody, and there was a big hole in his chest, and when he saw the girl, she was terrified. We heard screams behind us, and Bella with a child in her arms asked the heroine to save her, but the killer appeared behind her and stabbed the woman in the neck with one precise movement. The girl woke up again drenched in sweat, and realizing that it was just a dream, she reassured herself that Rechi was still alive, and she would never leave him alone again, and would protect him with her own life. In the tent on the street, they were accepting applications, and it was the girl's turn. She came in, asking if she was at the right address. The man was immediately charmed by the girl's beauty, and so he gave her the form without further questions, and she asked him to remember to put her on the list of students. When she went outside, she was happy, knowing that tomorrow she would see her brother, and in the meantime he was looking at the newcomers from his office when an officer came in to tell him something. The man came to report an interesting incident that happened 2 days ago. A girl came to them through the pass. The captain was surprised that there were people there, but the officer was no less surprised. When he was informed about this, he personally came down from the tower, and yes, a person did come to them. He was lucky to get out of the mountainous area, but is this a place from which you can get out only by luck? At first, the man thought it was a demon, but it was definitely a person. She did not look like a demon at all. Asking the reason for her arrival, she said she wanted to take the entrance exam for the Knights of Phileas. The captain was very surprised by this reason, but the officer saw this emotion and immediately convinced him that it was not a lie. He was already on the training field this morning, and it seems that the second test is over. After handing over the documents of this participant, Herzog suddenly laughed hysterically. Realizing that he had no more reports, he let him go. And when he saw the name Ellen, he thought about how long it had been since he had heard it. Meanwhile, in the dining room, she was gathering her strength for the first and second trials. But Rechi was not there, so she wondered if she would see him at the last trial. Suddenly, the guy asked her permission to sit down next to him, and she didn't mind. And after sitting down, the guy said that it was hard for him to eat alone, and when he saw the bandage on the girl's bone, he asked if she was a candidate for the Knights of Phyllis. He assured her that he was also passing the exam to become a Knight of Phileas, and then asked if she had seen him punch his opponent in the face. Laughter was heard behind him. Other participants assured the man that if they had met Magaf on their way, they would have been lying at his feet, and everyone supported him. And then a group laugh began. The guy was annoyed. He said they were pissing him off, and then showed them a blue armband, which was proof of his morning test as a Knight of Phileas. Everyone fell silent in an instant, and saw that the girl sitting next to him was also wearing a blue bandage, and then Magaf himself got angry and accused her of stealing it. The other men in the dining room reassured him that it was all impossible, and he just had an inferiority complex. The girl noticed that they talked a lot during lunch, and the guy added that he should just ignore their words. But the heroine assured me that she didn't care about people like them, but it seems that the furious man heard this. He said that the level of filet must be very low if even women pass. He came here for a salary. So is everyone here such a weakling? And he heard that this duke is a half-breed with witch's blood, and everyone started laughing, but the heroine was filled with cold anger. The man claimed that this woman must have bewitched him, and it seems that this noble lord was a weakling. It was obvious from the sight of all these knights. A child of a witch, a half-breed. He didn't even notice how the girl was already standing over him, and she was telling him that he should take back his words. He tried to snap back, but seeing that incredible cold anger, he shivered, and the heroine kept saying that he should take them back. The impudent man rose in response, brazenly asking what words he needed to take back, and whether he had hurt someone's pride. But the girl remained cold, assuring him that she didn't care what they would say about her, but would not allow him to insult the Duke. He smiled, saying that she was talking nonsense, that she didn't care what he said about the Duke, and asked if she would really defend the son of a witch. She knew that they all hated Rechi. On the day of the knighthood, the girl overheard a conversation between a man and his wife. The woman despised all the knights of Phyllisis for following the son of a witch. The man tried to calm her down, saying that although he was the son of a witch, he was still the head of Philion. But if the Duke were here, he was interrupted by an angry woman who shouted at him not to say what he did not know, that the cursed witch had killed her family, burned the whole village in an instant, and began to accuse him of being ready to serve the witch's descendant. And it was all because of that incident, a direct descendant of Bella, while she was sleeping for 20 years. Her thoughts were interrupted by a guy sitting next to her, who turned to the impudent man and said that if he had time to insult others, he should take care of himself. The man was seriously angry, so he said that he looked too pathetic with his pride, and so, screaming that the guy wanted to die, he pulled out a knife and ran to him. But in an instant, the angry man was stopped by the heroine, with one hand, saying that it was not wise to use a knife in the dining room. The man was very surprised by the girl's strength. But his anger did not go away, so he assured her that she was holding back Magaf Iliad himself, the very famous man. But the girl did not let him go, but only said quietly that she did not care who he was. Behind his back, people started discussing him. No one knew who Magaf was, deciding that he had appointed himself. And he, fearing for his reputation, shouting that they shouldn't laugh at him, went at heroine with his fists. He struck many times, but never achieved his goal. And then it was time to strike back. And the girl needed one blow to make him fall to his knees, unable to even breathe normally. In the end, she told him to get out of here if he didn't want to get hurt. And at the same time, a guy sitting nearby came over to congratulate her, assuring her that knocking down such a big guy deserved praise. He introduced himself as Cézanne, and said that it was fate that they met here, and that he wanted them to continue studying together. The teacher announced the beginning of the third exam. Elaine, who had handled all the monsters before without any problems, standing in the group, she and Cézanne exchanged greetings, and then the girl noticed that Rechi was nowhere to be found. The officer, who was a teacher at the time, explained the rules of this test. The order would be random. The battle would be against the examiner who was drawn over there. The rules were simple. You just had to hold out for 1 minute. If they leave the circle or step on the line or lose the fight, they will be disqualified and will not pass the test. There was a minute for questions before the test, and Ellen asked if Herzog would be present. Suddenly, she saw behind her the person she had been looking for a long time, and the teacher said that Herzog would be the examiner, so he came. When she saw him, the heroine was visibly surprised. He had grown stronger than she had imagined, and she wondered why he had become so big. Having secured his role with the teacher, he addressed everyone, first introducing himself as the leader of the knights, saying that they would fight against him. But he came here as an examiner, so they should not worry, and so let them show their best. The first participant was Heather Tague, and they started. The student made a sharp leap forward, but the Duke remained calm, and at the last moment when the student was about to hit him, suddenly he flew away and his sword was broken. This caused a fit of despair in all those present, and the commander himself, only in a calm voice, ordered the next person to come out, one by one. All those who came out lost as easily as the first. Cézanne said that he was too strong, and it was unlikely that anyone would be able to last a minute. And meanwhile, the next opponent of the Duke was the heroine, and she entered the circle with determination. The man remembered that it was she who had crossed the monster's lair, and so he was sure that it was Ellen. So both sides prepared themselves, and the battle began. Once they had already fought with swords, although Rechi was only 3 years old. He really wanted to defeat his sister, but she assured him that he should grow up a little more. But he was stubborn since childhood, and he kept saying that he wanted to defeat his sister as soon as possible. After that, she offered to make a promise that the boy would learn to fence, but would never draw his sword against his family, and then his sister would take responsibility and teach him to fence. Now everything was different. They crossed swords, and the heroine at that moment was worried that she had failed to keep her promise. The boy grew up alone while she was away, and so she was very sorry. Suddenly, her sword cracked, and she immediately woke up, after a long time of thought, and the Duke himself noticed this, assuring her that her sword would probably not survive. After that, a flurry of blows began. No one could hit their opponent. Both sides were equally skilled, but the girl did not understand what she was doing now, because there is a limit to everything. But there were only 20 seconds left, and she did not know if her sword would hold. Crossing the blades once again, the man said that with such a weak sword she would not last long, and it was a big mistake to neglect her weapon. And after these words, what she feared happened. The sword broke in two. The Duke's blade was already flying towards the girl's shoulder, and everyone present was worried when a transparent magic sword suddenly appeared, shocking the captain himself. The heroine didn't know if he was using fencing skills or if he was even human, but at that moment, the timer ran out, and the man said that she had a talent, and therefore she was being knighted. The captain said that she had passed, and the girl was sincerely happy, thanking him heartily, and went to the group, where everyone was shocked to see her. The knighthood ceremony began, and the Duke asked all the graduates to come up to the podium, with heroine being the first to go. Sitting down on one knee, the initiation began. The Duke declared that she would have to give her life for Filion, and with this oath, the girl swore that she would be with him in life and in death, and she was determined to keep her promise. But now she couldn't tell him the whole truth, as it would hurt him to realize the fact that Bella's heart belongs to her. And so she will keep this secret in her heart, the one and only Bella, and her precious Raichi. Her new life will belong to them. After they finished, they all went outside. Cézanne noticed that all the people around were Knights of Phyllis, and the teacher said that everything was over, so it was time to start getting acquainted. First of all, the man introduced himself first. He is the deputy commander and also one of the Knights of Thales. His name is Lord Lowell, and he is the Duke's aide. He also introduced the woman next to him, another deputy commander, Hilary Rister, after which he began to explain the essence of the mission of their order. The main mission of these knights is related to monsters. Knights are selected depending on the difficulty and characteristics, and they strive to destroy monsters and fulfill requests from the country. He also had a special message from the Duke himself, as the position of the Duke's escort had been vacant for some time, and now applicants for the position of the escorting knights are being accepted. So the deputy asked if there were any applicants. There was silence, and he realized that it would probably be too hard for them. But one person did raise his hand. The heroine declared her desire to become an escort knight. Suddenly they started whispering behind her back. They didn't understand why she did it, claiming that she was very strange. The girl noticed this and didn't understand why they had such a reaction, because these knights were under the command of Raichi, but one of the people present was familiar with Ellen's name. When she finished, Cézanne came running to the heroine, asking why she decided to become the Duke's escort, and whether she even knew what kind of work it was, to which she was indignant, as if it was strange that a knight wanted to accompany a captain. Interrupting them, a girl came up to them. Smiling sweetly, she addressed Cézanne, and completely ignoring the heroine, she approached the guy, assuring him that she was glad to meet him, and she was a year older, and her name was Sophia. He saw that she was senior in rank, and also noticed that she completely ignored Ellen. She did not finish talking to him, and the heroine lost interest and walked away. He wanted to stop her, but she said that the deputy captain wanted to see her. Walking further, she saw snow, and in a moment her eyes filled with joy. It was the first snow she had seen since waking up, as at the same moment a horse, which had apparently left its owner, came to meet her and decided to go for a walk. His name was Nisi, and Herzog suddenly appeared and said that this was the first time he had ever seen his horse allow someone to touch him. She kept a cool head and said she was glad to meet him. He had heard that she had decided to become an escort knight, and he said bluntly that it would be better for her to leave. This shocked the girl, so she asked him to explain everything. and the captain only briefly replied that everyone who accompanied him died protecting him from the killers. Perhaps it was a miracle. But still, if she stayed here, she would lose her life. The heroine asked herself questions to which she had no answer. What had been happening to him all this time? The Knights of Phyllis were stronger. Who could have killed them? She still knew nothing about it, but she still resolutely declared that she would not die herself and would protect him. He smiled. His smile had a hint of cruelty in it, and he asked her how she could be so sure she wouldn't die. But she replied without hesitation that she had taken an oath, so her life was now in his hands. She assured him that she was not one of those who would die easily. The man wanted to say something, but refused to do so, and only allowed her to stay, to which she was immensely happy, and said that she would work very hard. The Duke was surprised by the girl's emotions. He did not understand why she was so happy if she could die at any moment. But the girl said with a radiant smile that she would die defending her captain. He still couldn't understand why this devotion appeared, but in any case, he was on his way to his place, so he said goodbye, and the smile on the girl's face never disappeared. After leaving, the heroine watched him for a while and realized how hard it was for him to be alone. But now she would never leave him. It was her first day as a chaperone, and she was now able to stay with Rechi, and so she was eager to meet him in the hallway, and she noticed that the door to his office was open, and she could hear screaming behind it. In the middle were the vice captain and a girl named Kofia. The man assured her that whatever she was feeling now was too late. Everything had already been decided, and she was hysterical, screaming at him, saying that she had been rejected, and this woman had been accepted as an escort to the knight for some reason. So why could she and Kofia not? After that, she ran out of the office in tears. Meeting heroine at the entrance, she gave her a hateful look and ran as far as the eye could see. The deputy did not give a clear answer as to what happened, only assured her that they would talk on the way to the office. On her way to the office, she asked if Kofia had also applied to be a knight escort. She had joined last year, but the commander rejected her and she gave up. But this year they chose a heroine as an escort, and so she thought it was not fair to her. So they came. The massive wooden door was in front of them, and the vice captain knocked, but no one answered, so he decided to check if there was anyone inside. But the room was empty. It looks like Herzog has gone to practice. The vice captain assured her that the man often goes to morning workouts, so he let her wait right there. The girl's attention was drawn to the sword on the table, and she thought she had seen it somewhere before, and in a moment realized that before this long dream, right before Rechi's birthday, she had ordered a sword from a blacksmith. She wanted to engrave a picture on it because she wanted this sword to be special, and then showed the exact place where she would like it engraved. And now it was exactly what the heroine wanted to give to her boyfriend for his birthday. It was supposed to end when Filion was destroyed, but Rechi found it. Suddenly, a man's voice behind her asked what she was doing here. It was Herzog. He appeared so quietly that she didn't even notice him, but he was angry and wanted to know the reason for her appearance in the office. The Duke said that no one had allowed the heroine to take his things, and the girl panicked at that moment when she saw the anger in the commander's eyes. So she decided to do the first thing that came to her mind, namely bow low and apologize. The man snorted and walked away, but too late. Vice Captain Lowell came up, apologizing for not warning him in advance, assuring him that perhaps only the sword was forbidden to touch by anyone. For the Crown Prince, this sword is the most valuable thing, and he didn't know all the details. But the Duke always carries his sword as a talisman, so from now on, you should never touch the sword. Anyway, we have to go out first. As the Duke is on patrol, he will be at the front door. She hesitated a bit and followed him. She was glad that Rechi liked the sword. When he was still young, a man named Walter came to him. He brought the young prince a box with that very sword in it. In front of the castle gate, he met a man, and he said that he was the grandson of the blacksmith who forged this sword, and he asked to give it to Mr. Rechi. He saw him for the first time, but he said that this sword was forged on behalf of Ellen. The boy did not know who she was, to which Walter said that Prince's mother had a very influential family, and because Prince did not like to talk about his mother, the man did not say anything. The guy interrupted the man, assuring him that he would listen to him and then judge him, but for now, "Let him take him to this blacksmith." When they got to the house, they saw that the old blacksmith could no longer get out of bed, and that he did not have much time left, so they began to ask him about the sword. Then the girl said she was returning to Sebeka, but after what happened, she did not come to pick up the finished sword. Perhaps she was drawn into the events of that day, and so the man waited until the sword was completely ready. He didn't have long to live, so before he died he wanted to find that child. But fortunately, although it was too late, the gift found its owner. Walter once told the prince that he grew up receiving love while he was still a child, and although he did not remember anything about that time, he could not give this sword that Ellen left behind to anyone. The group of knights, under the command of the Duke, gathered and lined up, and he began to explain the route they were to patrol today. Not long ago, the flow of non-locals had increased due to the entrance exams, and so there had been reports of minor accidents and offenses. So today, the captain was going to patrol the territory on his own. Half of the group would go north, and the other half would follow him, and everyone chorused that they understood their task. The heroine who was standing next to him, in the role of an accompanying knight, noticed that the man still carried the sword he had given him with him, and as expected it fit him very well, and so she was very happy that he cherished it. The patrol went smoothly for a while. People noticed the high-ranking knights and bowed at their sight, and the girl breathed a sigh of relief as her fears were not justified, and everyone was friendly, as expected. The locals were grateful to the Duke. Suddenly, a little girl approached the heroine, handing her a package that she claimed contained cookies she had prepared for the Duke, and the heroine first asked the captain what to do, and he said he would eat them later, so she could take them. The heroine thanked the girl for her concern, and at the same moment she saw from the corner of her eye a man with a crazy expression running towards Herzog, and he was holding a bucket with some kind of liquid. She managed to warn him about the possible danger, but the man did not retreat even when he saw the attacker in front of him. But in a moment, his escort was in front of him and took over what the man had spilled. All the nearby knights immediately panicked, and the man was shocked by such a reckless act, and the attacker was immediately caught and immobilized. The man hysterically claimed that his grandchildren died because of his mother, and they were not even 5 then, so why was he still alive? The heroine realized that these were the families of those who died during the events in Seebeck. But it was not Bella's fault. There was someone who controlled her. The girl wanted to tell it, but she couldn't. When suddenly the captain put his hand on her shoulder and asked why she did it, because he could have easily avoided it himself. After which he turned to one of the knights and ordered him to take Elaine to a place to spend the night. She wanted to be outraged, but started sneezing because it was fortunately just cold water, and the man said it was useless to resist, so let her wash and dry herself, and then let her come to his office. After they left, the bound man began to accuse Herzog of being a coward and using his subordinates as a shield, and as expected, he was just like that witch. The man was running out of patience, so in a cold tone, he told him to be quiet and to be glad that his throat had not yet been cut, and ordered the knights to take him to prison. As they led him away, he cursed the Duke and everyone who helped him, saying that everyone knew about his mother's sins, and that the fact that he was still alive was a sin in itself. The captain noticed the bucket in front of him that Elaine had protected him from, and sank into thought. He didn't care about all the bad words people were throwing at him, but for some reason the thoughts of this moment were extremely unpleasant. His thoughts were interrupted by one of the knights, who reminded him of the patrol, and the man said that the number of people had decreased significantly, so the patrol would continue tomorrow. Walking back, the captain realized that the man's words were not a lie, but that he had brought this street back to life was also true, which meant that his existence was not false. When they returned, a restless Cézanne was waiting for the girl. He wanted to know if it was true that she had been doused with water today. People said that today she was doused instead of the Duke. The guy did not understand it, despite the fact that she was an escort, why she sacrificed herself so much. If there had been poison or boiling water, it could have ended much worse than it did. The girl assured him that it was true that she could be injured or sick, but she thought it would hurt the Duke even more if he got hurt himself. At the entrance to the captain's office, she knocked, and after being allowed in, she went in, apologizing for taking so long. It took her longer than she expected, but he assured her that he had just arrived, so there was nothing to worry about. Coming closer to his desk, The Duke asked why Ellen was so selfless, and the heroine did not understand the essence of the question, so she answered uncertainly that she was an attendant and she had to be. When he saw the girl's troubled look, he assured her not to pay attention, that he had asked a stupid question, and therefore let her forget about it. He thought about the fact that he had guessed what was happening to him. He had been showing his feelings too much. Suddenly, when he was dipping his pen in ink, he accidentally spilled it on the table, and the girl immediately started to worry about him, but he assured her that it was nothing. He would just rewrite all the documents. But that was not the case. The heroine pointed to his hands, which were stained with ink. She asked him to give her his hand. He wanted to refuse, but the girl took them herself, saying that she would wipe them, and although the man assured her that she would also get dirty in that case, the girl replied that she had a handkerchief with her for such a case. She was glad that she always carried it with her when Rechi was a child, because he often caught colds and she had no choice but to carry a handkerchief with her at all times. The girl thought that now that he was grown, she would no longer have the opportunity to use it, but she was wrong. The captain said that it seemed impossible to use this handkerchief, but she assured him that it was created for this purpose. When he was done, his hand was clean, and the girl, as if instructing him, said that he needed to remove the remaining straight line with water, and looking at his hand he confirmed that he had been treated like a child. After that day, there were a few quiet days. The heroine watched the Duke work, until one day an event happened that no one could have expected. After saying goodbye after another day's work, she went to her room, satisfied that nothing had happened that day, and she hoped that it would continue like that, when suddenly she saw a flashlight in front of her, and one of the maids was there, asking for help. The maid claimed that there were some scary sounds coming from the room, and she was very scared, so she asked the heroine to go with her to check it out, and she agreed, saying that it was better for her to be behind her back, which made the maid very happy. When she approached the room, she did hear an ominous sound, so she was on the alert, and when she opened the door, a dagger flew at her, and she deflected it on pure reaction, and the maid screamed. The girl warned her to stay behind, but the frightened maid dropped her lantern in fear, and suddenly she saw a group of armed men in front of her, and immediately realized that they were hired killers. At the same moment, knives flew at her from all sides, but the girl quickly deflected them all, and then she was struck with a sword that shone in the dark, and the heroine struggled to repel it, and realized that there was a master among the killers. The person who could use it must be very powerful, and most likely their main target is Rechi, and if so, they must capture him. The girl took a deep breath, and then with one incredibly fast jerk, she rushed through a group of enemies, and their commander did not even realize what had happened, and only his entire group fell dead. He was terrified, saying that he had heard that she had just entered the school, but the heroine did not listen to him, and with one strong blow that broke her ribs, she knocked the master out. She assured him that she was leaving her husband alive only because she needed to find out who was behind it all. She turned around and noticed that the maid was no longer there, and asserted that everything was safe now. At the same moment, she suddenly realized that sounds were coming from Rechi's room, and she realized that the mercenaries might already be there. She immediately went to his room and noticed that the maid was already swinging a knife at Herzog. With one quick punch, she knocked out the attacker. And when the captain noticed her, he asked her if the attackers had entered her room as well. And when she saw the blood on her husband's face, she was worried. But it was okay. It wasn't his blood. A moment later, the vice captain appeared, noticing the corpses. He said that they were mercenaries. He was worried when he saw blood on both of them, but they both assured him that the blood was not theirs, and then said that it had been less than a month since the last attempt, and perhaps they should change their schedule a little. The captain asked what was meant by changing the schedule, and the man assured him that it might sound a bit unexpected. But why not move Miss Ellen's residence to the next room to the Duke's? The man was confused by this offer, but he was not listened to, as the happy girl had already agreed and said she could move in right now. The captain said that this was all very unexpected, but Vice Captain Lowell said that in this situation there is no other way out. Since the knights guarding his room were defeated, something must be done quickly, because he is still in danger. The heroine supported everything. to which the Duke exhaled heavily and asked if Ellen wanted to change rooms so badly, when suddenly she came almost close to him with a happy smile. But then, with a sad face, she said that if he still didn't like it. Seeing this, the man assured her that they had misunderstood, and her expression changed again. Realizing that he was powerless here, the man gave up and let them do what they wanted, in which case the girl was in a hurry to pack her things. But Howell stopped her, saying that it would be nice to clean up the place, and in that case they would have to postpone the move until tomorrow. Later, the two murderers who were lucky enough to survive were visited in prison by the witch's son, who first asked the man whose gag was removed how many days had passed, and when he learned that no more than an hour had passed, he was very surprised, since the girl was so strong that he thought he had lost consciousness for several days. The captain said that he had heard from his escort that the killer had reached the level of a master, and therefore asked with firm determination who had given the order to do it. The murderer assured him that he should know everything anyway. There are many masters on the continent, and without letting him finish, the Duke ordered him to stay on the subject, because he was trying to confirm his theory. He was wondering if the killer could betray the person who hired him, so the captain gave him a choice. If the killer bites off his tongue now, he will die quickly, and he will say nothing more. He had a chance to choose his own death. But still, if the killer confessed, the captain assured him that he would forget about the attack. The man was not sure if the captain was telling the truth, if he was trying to get a confession and then kill him. No, it meant that he would keep him alive until he confessed. But the first thing he had to do was get out of prison, so he decided to tell everything, and although it was risky, it was still a better option than dying like that. Suddenly, a knife that came out of a heel stabbed the neck of the killer, another killer who was being fooled by a maid. With anger on her face, she said that she could not believe that he had succumbed to the terms of the enemy, and that is why you should not use a master who is driven by greed. When she saw Herzog's evil face, she assured him that he would not be fooled. The man she served did not even think about the possibility of betrayal, and so he created a group of assassins, consisting only of people who did not hate him. This is only a temporary power that was bought with money. There are many people who hate and want to kill the witch's son, and he will not be able to defeat him even if he gathers the same traitors. And after finishing this, she had an ampule of poison from somewhere, and in a moment, all the killers were dead. The next day, the heroine had already moved to another room, and she was happy that from now on, she would live in the next room with Recchi. But on the way with her things, she was intercepted by Cézanne, who was very worried. He had heard about the night before. People said it was mercenaries, so he was afraid she would be injured. But the girl just assured him that everything was fine and there was nothing to worry about. The guy, with a tired look on his face, breathed out a sigh of relief, assuring her that he had been worried about her since she became an escort. And she apologized for making him worry. There were a lot of people nearby, and she noticed that for some reason they were all standing in front of the board, when Sophia came out with a mocking expression. The heroine saw her and greeted her cheerfully, and the guy next to her just exhaled heavily, realizing that nothing good should be expected from her. Sophia noticed that despite the hard day, the heroine looked quite fresh, despite the mess that had been made yesterday. She also wondered if she would be able to accompany him during the trip to the training camp. She didn't know what it was about, but Cézanne told her that there was a message about a 3-day training, and at this time, all the knights of Phyllis always do it. Without letting him finish, Sophia continued, "His Majesty will probably have a hard time looking after them all at this time, and if the attendant fails to do his job, an accident will happen." Cézanne realized that this girl was not shy in her expressions, so he asked her if she thought the current attendant was not competent enough. She was demonstrably surprised and assured him that she hadn't thought of anything like that, but was just worried that yesterday might happen again. But Lady Ellen was the escort whom the Duke recognized. Listening to this, the heroine thought that Sophia thought very highly of her, and so she took her hand with eagerness, thanking her for these words and assuring her that from now on she would work even harder to protect him. Everyone was shocked by this behavior. The guy noticed that it was not a compliment, and the girl did not understand what it had to do with anything, because the heroine did not look like a fool. But in any case, they said goodbye, and Sophia said that she had been watching how the girl was doing with her role since the first day. The girl went into the Duke's office, thinking about Sophia's words, and seeing the empty room. She realized that she needed to get the keys to the new room from him, so she waited. She waited so long that she started to worry, because this had never happened before. So she decided to check his room, and on the way she saw that the door to the room was open, and images immediately popped up in her head, saying that things like yesterday happened quite often. And in fear that it would happen again, she went into the room. But it was not quite what she expected. The captain who had just come out of the bathroom was standing in front of her, and he was wearing only pants. And realizing her mistake, the girl blushed. Seeing the half-naked man, the girl was very embarrassed, instinctively trying to cover her eyes with her hands, and after a moment of apologizing, she ran out of the room, but slipped. He caught her at the last moment, worried about her, and facing each other in such a situation. Both of them were very embarrassed, and the girl bowed and said that he was very late, and therefore she was worried. And after saying that, she ran out of the room. In the corridor, she was already coming to, thinking that she must be crazy. It didn't matter how much she was worried, but it was strange to be barged in like that. Reichi was already a grown man. He was already 23, which meant that it was time to start a family, to get married. She couldn't even imagine it, maybe because she was used to seeing him as a little boy. So who would become his bride? But it didn't matter, as long as he was happy. Later, Herzog himself came out dressed. He gave the girl the key, and she apologized again for what had happened. But he was not angry, as he knew she had not done it on purpose. And since her things were left in the office, they went there. On the way, she wondered if asking him would be too much. But she was very curious, and yet her thoughts were interrupted by the captain, as if reading her mind, who said he had overslept. The heroine was worried that it might have come out accidentally, but he reassured her that he had noticed her looking at him as if to ask him something, and then asked if it was so strange that he had overslept. The girl replied thoughtfully that she had a little bit, and the Duke laughed, and with a slight smile he said that he had been having nightmares, and that's why he woke up a little later than usual. The heroine, worried, said that if he was in the spotlight, it meant that he had a terrible nightmare, and he confirmed it, adding that he had been dreaming about it for a long time. When he came into the office, he asked her to end this conversation and start moving her things, but she couldn't get these words out of her head, the same horror all the time. The Duke did not disclose the details, but this dream must be related to the events in Seebeck, and if it is such a terrible nightmare, it would be better if it did not happen at all. The heroine promised herself that she would look for herbs that would help him sleep well, and from now on, she would look after him closely. A few days passed. Standing in front of a large group of knights, the captain asked if everyone was ready, and after receiving the answer, they set off on a campaign. On February 22nd, the knights left Killiard for a 3-day training. Cézanne was complaining that they had been walking for 3 hours and hadn't gotten anywhere yet, and a guy named Abel noticed he had joined the military at the same time as the heroes. He asked how the boy had become a master with such weak stamina, but Cézanne denied his fatigue, when suddenly his prayers were answered and it was announced that they had already arrived. The Duke pointed to their destination. He pointed to a rock with a waterfall and said that their Laguerre was on top of it, and from that moment on, they would start climbing the rock. The mood of the people dropped after hearing this, but to support them, the captain added that the last 7 would enter the water, and upon hearing this, everyone suddenly jumped up and ran forward. Ellen decided that she should hurry up as well. When suddenly a shiver went through her body, she noticed someone's fleeting glance that made her warn, but then Cézanne grabbed her shoulder and told her that it was not time to look around. She had to run. Upon reaching the finish line, the older knights looked at those who did not make it in the water and laughed merrily, claiming that this time there were only newcomers, beginners, and did not know that such an unexpected training was waiting for them. Cézanne and Ellen also got there. The guy was happy that they made it and asked what time she arrived. But she assured him that she didn't pay attention. But in her head she was sure that if she had used all her skills, she would have been the first. But now it was better not to stand out. The boyfriend supported her, assuring her that she was the first among the newcomers. When Abel came out of the water and addressed the boy, saying that he was just lucky to be in time and therefore did not need to go into the water. Cezanne began to laugh at the poor guy in a friendly way, claiming that he had been talking about the mountain road from the beginning, and immediately realized that he was the only one who had been climbing the rock. The guy decided not to tolerate this, and also to play a joke on his friend, so he took him and threw him into the water. Water poured in all directions, and the guy was angry because of this injustice, because he was in time and did not have to go into the water.